I am pretty worried that Warren Buffett might be about to mess up his whole legacy so close to the finish line. He announced that he'll be stepping down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, but the performance of the recent months is devastating. So that's why today we have to talk about the outlook in Berkshire Hathaway. Where do we see the stock headed from here onwards? Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to another video by HKCM Global. My name is Joe and today we have to talk about the most influential person in investing, the one and only, the legendary Warren Buffett. Right now he's 94 years old already, and by the end of this year he plans to step down as the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. And with his 94 years old, he has not only influenced a generation but generations, plural, plenty of them. And he has been a role model, a shining example of capitalism and of investments, because he never was one of those that chased the big hypes or that was very loud and outrageous in his investment, or that came in like a hawk and completely got rid of businesses that weren't all that profitable and then laying off employees by the thousands. He never did that, like many other investors did do. But in spring of this year, he announced that it is gonna be over. An era is about to end. Warren Buffett is about to step down as the most influential investor of our time. And the guy who will follow him is gonna be Greg Abel. Will he be able to step into those footsteps? What? I know, that was a bad one, I am sorry. But nevertheless, the question has to be asked, because ever since this announcement was made, the stock of Berkshire Hathaway hasn't performed all that well. And I'm gonna show you what I mean here in just a sec on the chart. So I have here for you brought in white, that is the stock of Berkshire Hathaway and their performance. And honestly, Berkshire Hathaway is of course not like a other stock like Microsoft, Apple, or whatever you might come up with. But Berkshire Hathaway is more an investment fund, right? So one would actually expect that Berkshire Hathaway is able to, first of all, track the S&P 500 quite accurately, but then of course deliver a margin of profit on top of that, because otherwise there's no point in even doing all that effort of picking out stocks and holding and buying companies. Otherwise, you could just buy the S&P 500 like every 12-year-old could do. And that is exactly where the problem lay in recent months. So with companies like Berkshire Hathaway, the only value that they do bring for investors is that they deliver a better performance, a better return on capital than if someone was to just buy the S&P 500 blindly and hold it. And to be quite honest, Berkshire Hathaway has really struggled to do just that in recent times. And I'm gonna also explain to you why that is. So if we take a look at it, so let's maybe start from this little bottom here in the market. So for both the S&P 500 and for Berkshire Hathaway back in October of 2023. So from this bottom here in the market, the S&P 500, for example, let's take a noteworthy top. That is a top in both stocks, to be fair. And let's maybe take this one right here. So up until this point, the S&P 500 back in December of 2024 has delivered 48% in profit. Berkshire Hathaway in the very same time, so this was that stock peak right here, has also delivered 48% in profit. So perfectly tracking the S&P 500. Not bad, but also a clear failure of the mission that they set out to accomplish. But then it gets even worse, because that point in time that I chose here with December of 2024, that is actually the best performance that Berkshire Hathaway in recent times managed to pull off. Because from that point then, and you remember up until this point, Berkshire Hathaway was only able to track the S&P 500, not outperform it in the slightest. But then if we start from this point here then onward and see, so what has happened since is that Berkshire Hathaway, ever since December of 2024, so right now we're talking 8 months or almost 9 months since that time, Berkshire Hathaway has pretty much delivered 0% of returns. While the S&P 500 in the very same time, I mean, the returns have also not been all that marvelous, but at least the S&P 500 returned 6.5% ever since. And the story becomes all that much sadder if we look here at this down peak in the market. So you remember in the end of the first quarter of 2025, we saw quite a notable correction in the S&P 500. So altogether, the S&P 500 experienced a downturn of almost 20%. And then no wonder Berkshire Hathaway also had a similar downturn here, but that's not the point that I want to talk about, because ever since this down peak here in the markets, ever since this bottom, the S&P 500 has so far already managed to deliver 30% of profit. So that from April till August of this very year, only 4 months, 30% of performance in the S&P 500. Amazing. And what has Berkshire Hathaway done since? So first of all, they recovered beautifully, even coming to the new all-time high just weeks after this down peak, so way better than the S&P 500. But ever since, they have just collapsed. And so in the very same manner, if we then start to track the performance here from this bottom in the market and also for Berkshire Hathaway, we are looking at only 6%. 6 versus 30, meaning you would have made 6 times more money investing just blindly in the S&P 500, like every 12-year-old can do, compared to an investment in Berkshire Hathaway. If that isn't a devastating revelation, I don't know what is. And I mean, I can also show it to you even more apparently. So if we just bring the S&P 500 and Berkshire Hathaway and we align this bottom here in the market, you can see that from this bottom, the S&P rallied while Berkshire Hathaway just corrected onward and even made a new lower low. So that's why, as mentioned earlier, I'm really worried that Warren Buffett is about to mess up his legacy. And I will show you why that is. So if we come over here to this chart, here we can see the cash reserves that Berkshire Hathaway is holding. So if you are an investor, right, you want to have your cash, of course, invested in profitable companies, because that will give you the big return. Just having it laying on the sidelines and collecting interest rates on the treasury bills that you are holding with your cash reserves, that is not the way to make a huge profit in the market, right? However, currently, and I have not seen any newer numbers than this one here from the end of the second quarter of 2025, Berkshire Hathaway is holding around $350 billion in cash. An astronomically high number, but of course what you need to know to bring this cash position into relation is that the current portfolio size, so all the stock holdings that Berkshire Hathaway holds, accumulates to right now $268 billion, so substantially lower than their cash reserves, meaning that all in all, Berkshire Hathaway, the huge investment fund, is right now about 60% in cash and only 40% invested in companies, invested in the stock market, all while the S&P 500 had this huge rally of 30% in just 4 months. That's almost a 100% rally in a single year if you want to extrapolate that number. So in those times, Warren Buffett has been holding 60% of his portfolio in cash. So he really must be betting on a huge market downturn, because otherwise that makes no sense whatsoever. And talking then about sense in all of this mess that is unfolding here, I now brought for you our outlook here on the stock of Berkshire Hathaway. And if you're yet not familiar with the work that we do here at HKSim Global, is we are a market analyst and we analyze not on a fundamental basis like Warren Buffett does, but we analyze on an Elliott Wave basis. Elliott Waves are repeating patterns in the price action of a market that are all due to market psychology and can therefore be found in every single market all throughout history as long as human beings have been involved in that market. And if you follow that link down there in the description, you can find on our website 200 assets that we analyze on a daily basis, divided on multiple packages that you can choose on your own liking. And if you subscribe to one of those packages, you will get daily updates on those stocks. You can get, of course, all the entries to our model portfolio in that set package. And you will also get all updates that we see in the price action of the market, all prognoses that we do have. Like, for example, the one that we're talking about right now. So here on the overreaching time frame, we have here the 1 week chart for Berkshire Hathaway. So every single candle is 1 week of price action. And we conclude that in the overreaching time frame, in the grand scheme of things, we are currently in a wave 1, 2, 3, 4 in the making of an overreaching wave 5 that should conclude the even higher reaching wave 5 time frame here to conclude then a long-term overreaching wave 1 top here in the markets. That means every single impulsive movement in the markets is comprised of a 5 waves wave structure. So 1, 2, 3, 4 right now still in the making, and a wave 5 to follow to complete that, and to then be followed by a 3 waves downward structure to correct that before lying upwards impulse. And that then means that we have here a target zone on the chart here for this wave 4 pivot point to occur, which currently we are still about 9% off. And of course, as you see, we have been way closer to this target zone here, but also you probably know no price action in the market is just a straight line. And so that's why it's no surprise whatsoever that on the way, ever since this wave 3 top here, on the way to this wave 4 bottom, it is natural that we see a counter correction here, and then the price action to finally fall into this target zone that we have here on the chart, somewhere between 415 and 444. And as soon as we finally fall into this target zone here, we then see a continuation of the upwards trend for Berkshire Hathaway somewhere in the area of 630, maybe potentially all the way up to 650, 660. So that would mean only from the top of this target zone another 45, maybe potentially even close to 50% more headroom. And then and only then will we see a prolonged correction in the stock of Berkshire Hathaway. So following this wave 1 top here will be a huge correction, because this wave 1 top here in blue that you can see on the chart is a major long-term top. We're not talking about a top in the time frame of months, but of a top in the time frame of probably maybe even a decade. But as that is still quite a ways off, let's look into the present time. And for that reason, let's jump to the 4-hour chart here. So again, now every single candle is just 4 hours. And here, of course, we have the very same target zone here for this wave 4 top. And you can see that we have been already quite close to this target zone here. And we have only yet missed the target zone by 2.5%. But as of now, we're still completely confident that we will see the price action fall into this target zone here for the wave 4 pivot point. However, as we are not stubbornly sticking to our predictions, we always have to be super transparent with you and tell you what we see in the markets. And then it's yours to decide what you will do with it. So as that is the case, I have to tell you that on a pure technical basis, it would also be possible. The structure here would also support an already established wave 4 bottom here, an alternative wave 4 bottom here in the market. And in this case, we would already see rising prices here towards this wave 5 top then, but currently we only have this at a 32% probability. So the clear primary scenario is with quite a bit of confidence that the price action will continue to fall into this target zone here for the wave 4 pivot point, and the underlying wave C to complete here in this area between the 38.2 Fibonacci retracement and the 50% Fibonacci retracement. So if you as an investor still have confidence in Berkshire Hathaway, even though Warren Buffett is leaving that company, that might be a great time for you to get into the market there and make use of the target zone that I just provided you here for you for free. And if you want to get more opportunities like this one, completely free of charge, please do not forget subscribing here to this channel, turning on the bell notifications, and I'm see you in the next one. Take care.